Special good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for coming to the social media keynote. Good afternoon. My name is Paul Acosta, as soon as everybody sees it. Okay, so sorry, I've tweeted you the live stream link. You can tweet it and then what else? So if you're here and you're live on Twitter, then please use the hashtag SMDayJamaica, and we can put out to the world what we're doing here in Shanghai, right here in Kingston, Jamaica. So we're going to begin with our welcome with from Miss Nooks, and she's the communications engineer at Shanghai. Please welcome her.
Okay, first, CEO of Daily Retail, Mr. Hamal Powell, Senior Sponsorship and Development Manager at Digital, Mrs. Terry Harrell Bead, Online Brand Manager at Jamaica Video Company, Ms. Christina Carr, Managing Director of Marketing and Digital Agency, Mr. Andrew Raymore, Communications Coordinator at CB Foods, my colleagues, Safi Barrow, she is Jampro's own digital marketing specialist. Members of the social media community, members of the media, the internet, good afternoon. Good afternoon. First of all, let me, on behalf of the board and management of Jampro, welcome you all to our headquarters. This is our Kingston headquarters, and I would like to thank David Maritas for giving us the opportunity to be a part of this celebration dubbed Social Media or SM Day 2015. As marketers and social media managers, media and content creators, I'm sure we all understand why we're celebrating today. And will no doubt agree that we have a lot of options when it comes to choosing how to best reach our customers or target audiences. Being in the business for almost 15 years, my everyday conversations are always about where do we go? Do we go traditional marketing, mass media, digital, social media, public relations, celebrity promotions, or guerrilla marketing? However, more and more of our everyday discussions almost always involve social media. We never develop a marketing plan at Jampro without the inclusion of social media. What does this say? As the newest emerging marketing category, social media appears to be leading because of the users with large followings, who we often refer to as our influencers. I personally refer to them as undercover trendsetters, who are gradually adding new layers to the way marketers leverage social media. These social media users are everyday people who turn themselves into rock stars, I say. They blog, they record, they podcast themselves straight into online fame, and the fame portion is now translating into massive potential for big brands, such as some of the ones featured here, the Digicel, the Dina, and of course, Jampro, Jamaica's own investment and promotion agency. Now, in the world of social media, the spotlight's direction is determined by what interests readers and viewers. Those who have something interesting to say collect their own followers, giving people with wits and talents instant influence with the power to plug all of our brands. Now, no matter how savvy we think we are with this SM concept, there are some marketers that still aren't sold on this strategy, but sadly, those who hesitate now may soon be left out in the dust. Popular social media users are wising up to the chance to connect with major brands daily. Smart marketers are building relationships that cost pennies and could pay out for years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we can comfortably say that with social media, influencers blend well with the marketing tools we're already using, TV, radio, everything. We do integrated marketing campaigns all the time, and we just use social media as an added avenue to push out our brand's message. Now, we can also say that working with popular social media users isn't different from working with a PR firm we're asking to build our brand awareness and or brand identity, or to get us on TV or radio or so. It's no different. And if we follow the market, we can also say that customers are aggressively turning to social media. We can say that these influencers have also proven their legitimacy in marketing. So by now, this type of marketing we can comfortably say has proven track record, right? Yes. We know that social media works and it's reaching our consumers or target audiences. So for me, and certainly for Jampro, it's a very special day, and I'm truly, truly excited about the conversation we're about to have. And just around the conversation of social media and this new era of marketing, I look forward to the animated discussions on the panels, and I look forward also to the keynote address from the very social Minister Lisa Hannon. Once again, welcome to Jampro, and thanks to David Maritas for inviting us to be a part of this mission. Happy SMA to all of you.
All right, so we're going to jump in right into the first panel. And Our moderator is Ms. Stephanie James Starr, and I'll just read a short profile of Ms. Starr first. So Stephanie is a digital marketing specialist, and she's also the creative director at Green ID. Green ID provides advanced consulting services for marketing and communication design solutions. She has worked in senior marketing and IT positions at several companies, including Caribbean Producers, Jamaica Limited, Grace Kennedy Limited, Miami International Wine Fair, Lockheed Martin, and AT&T. She has combined her broad-based industry experience with her technical background, executive marketing skills, and love for the environment to create new standards in brand building, PR, and advertising communications in the Jamaican landscape. That's why she is a digital marketing specialist. So please take a seat, Ms. Barrow. Please welcome her. And she will be joined on stage by the Development Manager at the Lena Company, Ms. Terry Reed.
Hi guys.
Mr. Kamal Powell, he's Senior Sponsorship and Development Manager for yourself. Next, we have Andrew Raymore, and he is the Communications Coordinator at CB Foods. And rounding out our panel is Christina Kerr, Managing Director at a digital agency, which is now revolutionizing. It's everything, right? It's a communications agency. And we hand over to Ms. Barrow. Please tweet SMD Jamaica, and we will see your tweet on the screen and also your followers. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. You guys hearing me?
Okay, sounds like we're good to go. Thanks again, Cord, and thank you everybody for joining us. I'm looking forward to the discussion. Now, everybody knows why companies like Apple, IKEA, Southwest Airlines have become cult brands. It's because they understand that they belong to their consumers. These brands create experiences so transformative and so disruptive that once a consumer tries them out and likes what they see, they never go back. What's more, they become their biggest champions. Today's wave of cult brands are using the basic principles of cult branding and taking it to the next level by creating on-demand apps, social followings, and consumer incentive programs that breed extreme customer loyalty and fanaticism. On this panel, you'll hear from several leaders of Jamaica's cult brands themselves, along with Market Needs Managing Director Christina Kerr, who will showcase that marketers can apply these principles in their work. So, first, let me introduce our panelists. Again, we have Terry Carell Reed. We also have Kamal Powell Sr. And we also have Andrew Raymore and Christina Kerr. So, let us begin. Come on. You have spent over 2 years as brand public relations manager at Diageo. Before Diageo, you were assistant brand manager at Spirit, covering Heineken, Red Stripe, Smirnoff, and Johnny Walker. Today, you are the senior sponsorship and development manager at Digital. How is digital changing the way you maximize your brand on sponsorship?
Hi everyone, thanks for being here. I think for us, sponsorship is very integrated into the lives of our consumers. So whenever we do entire sponsorship, we look at the 360 platform, and our own edit marketing maybe about 9, I started my career about 9 or 10 years ago in university. Nobody was talking about social media. So when we learned the 360 campaign, we're talking about TV, print, radio, etc. But you can't have a 360 campaign now without social media. And you have to look at all the elements that you want to drive. So, for example, take Sunfest. When you look at Sunfest, yes, they were the TV partners, online partners. But then you have radio and all the other aspects. But from our end, we incorporate what our consumers want to see, what they want to hear. So as early as the announcement in terms of at the launch, we have our social media team interacting with the consumers, getting their views, taking photos, tweeting, posting on Instagram, doing the Facebook posts, etc. And most of you here know how Facebook have become so commercialized that we can't post as much as possible, so we have to get very creative with it. It's important because you have to understand where you want to post the element. And if we look at the same property like Sunfest, there are certain things that you won't post on Instagram that you want to post on Twitter. So you might want to talk about volleyball on Twitter, but you won't talk on Instagram. You might want to look at Tifa or Aline or something like that on Instagram because of where your target audience are, so you know where you place them, etc. And we look into that. So it's for that reason that we develop an extensive internal social management team. We have a senior manager responsible for social management and other areas, and about 3 or 4 persons on this team that does a daily tour of going around Jamaica and ensuring that we capture all the interesting content elements. As was said before, it is important to know what your consumers are looking for. And I can remember just a couple of months ago, we went to Bunkers Hill in Clarendon, and I tell you, Bunkers Hill is probably about 3 hours drive from Kingston. And we went there because in December of last year, we created a sanitary convenience at basic/primary school in Portland. And then somebody wrote back to us on social media to say, hey, I'm a past student at Bunkers Hill Primary School. They do not have sanitary convenience. So can you help us out? And we reached out to that person who spoke to us on social media, and we went there and we transformed and gave the school this new sanitary convenience. So it's important to consumers to know that you are listening to them, you're interacting with them, and it's important for us to ensure that we try to incorporate or implement whatever they're saying and how we interact with our consumers.
Great, thank you for that. Harry, didn't forget about you. You hosted the International News Media Agency Association Congress Awards in New York, and it was held at Times Center of New York Times. It was a 2-day conference that closed with an awards dinner in Edison Ballroom at Edison Hotel in the heart of Times Square. Now, in the plenary, you quoted that he says, I was honored to have been given the opportunity and privilege to host such a prestigious event. I wanted to use the platform to showcase not only brand Jamaica, but certainly to represent the Beaner Company, the largest, oldest, and leading multimedia news company. Now, what was your takeaway from that experience?
By the way, thank you for having me. Congratulations, Carl. I think what you're doing is fantastic. This is like the only place you can actually come and be on your phone and you're not seen as being rude. So I think it's just awesome. No, I think one of the biggest takeaways and what I really learned from them is that they said, if you are a news company and you're still saying that you are a newspaper company, you're already wrong. They're saying in 2015, if you are a print company, then you're pretty much getting in the water. And so one of the takeaways was that anyone who's a content provider certainly cannot consider themselves newspaper or print exclusively, but you must consider yourself to be news media holistically. The takeaways is that, of course, as you rightfully said, is that you must listen to your readers. Once upon a time, when we provided content, it was a monologue. Really, what we would do is dish the news, you read the news, and then we just do the thing over and over again. We have a segment that allowed you to give your opinion, but really, it was just one-sided. And now with digital, there's this exchange of ideas. All of a sudden, when we push out our news, we're getting real-time feedback of what our readers think. Is this article, is this newsworthy? We don't like it, by the way. Our social media followers, I love them, but they certainly let us know what the pulse is, this is a story. You want me to tell you what's a story? This is a story. But that's fantastic. So we're able to use the analytics, we're able to use the digital so that we can even improve the manner in which we are providing content. And lastly, one of the biggest takeaways, because the Gleaner is also one of the largest digital advertising platforms, is that again, our users, readers, consumers come first. And what they want is a wonderful user experience. So give them the content, give them the ads, but try to figure out how you can marry the two without being intrusive, or invasive. So there were lots of takeaways, but it made me feel good that, the Gleaner, 180 years old, very, very traditional guys, and it was really hard to really break people who are accustomed to print and are accustomed to a process to tell them and convince them that social media is a necessity. But they kind of let me know that we're doing better at the Gleaner. My position was made. We now have social media managers, we have social media execs, and this is all because of the evolution that is social media. So the Gleaner is actually making this step, and it's in a good position.
Great, thank you, Karen. Andrew, you attended the social media week in New York earlier this year. How developed is our social media space in Jamaica?
All right, so I said the social media week in February in New York. I would have to say that it was an eye-opener in many ways. We are just getting started in a very fast-moving space. There are a lot of challenges ahead of us, and one of them is, for example, a small population. There are certain platforms which immediately kind of don't make sense unless you have the benefit of a brand the size of commands. But it's, for example, Snapchat. Trying to figure out how to use that properly. It's hard for Vine to take off if you don't have a huge following. It really showed that working in a small space, you have to be really creative. And also, you can't take a small following you have for that. With our small size, you can't ignore if you only have 1,000 followers. They can be very loyal, and those 1,000 can be influential and make a difference. And they're where you're going to go from. One example is one of our smallest brands, because I work with TV for also the whole so it's one of our smallest social media followers, distribution mix, tweets. It's almost negligible. We only just started paying attention. But it has one of the highest interaction rates. Farmers message on the Facebook page, they ask questions. Dog owners ask for feeds. They get in touch through it because they're very, very interested and it's their profit. So that's interesting. So that we can't ignore it's too small, but still we have a lot to do. And in terms of content creation, that's a challenge. When I saw the VP of marketing for Weight Watchers talk about the challenges that I think that size has with content creation, video creation, image photography, and costs. Social media managers for brands that some of us would love to work with in any capacity are talking about the serious challenges they face. You realize, what are we going to do? Because content is king, but content is expensive. So in our case, we have to think about food. We want to do, you see one Instagram post, behind it came posting costs, a chef, a photographer, a videographer, all people who are new age creators who have to be paid. So you have to weigh how do I justify to marketing, traditional marketing says that this post and this whole series of posts is worth $100,000 or $50,000. How do I create it more authentically? And I think what you really taught me is that also we have to try and generate content more so, because we're not going to have the budgets to always create brand new, fresh content. If you rely on the fans and engage them and encourage them.
And you also coordinate the communications for the other brands, CD Foods, Copperwood,
Right.
Caribbean Passion, CD Chicken, Chicken on Eggs, Smart Eggs, Bad Dog, you do all those, including your drinks as well?
Right, every brand, all of our brands. So my role as communication coordinator ranges from PR to SM, and I work with the relevant brand managers of each brand on their PR and social media. The reason that these two are joined is because CB now sees digital as important to every aspect of every campaign. So it's not an also run. We are looking at every campaign as we go forward. It's a key part. Digital and social media is missing. We're not going to do this.
Great. That's very interesting for food and beverage industry. food and beverage company that operates in that industry. Great, thank you. Now, my dear Christina. As the managing director of marketing, how are you engaging brands to accept that digital is the future?
Well, I think initially a lot of companies come to us to feel that they just need to have a presence because social media is happening, so we need to have a page, we need to just be there. And I think sometimes they don't really understand the value in it. It's not just about a presence because there are brands just like theirs that have a presence on social media as well. So it's also creating an online identity then that is that speaks to your brand values and what it is that you're offering. And it's interesting and that it stands out because there's so many brands and there's so many things happening online that when people follow, they want to follow for a reason. It has to relate to them, it has to be relevant, and it has to have some purpose in their life. I feel like, yes, it's a hobby and people are online and they look at things, but when it comes to brands, I feel like unless it's relevant to you, then really there's no point in me following a brand. So it's how is this brand enriching my life in some way? And I think it's getting brands to understand that they need to invest in quality content, things like. And I think in the past it was we have to be online, we need to post 5 times a day, 3 times a day, and we just need to be in the timeline. And then you're realizing now that it's not about being in the timeline because organic reach is kind of dead. You know, you have to be paying for everything. And when you're posting, it has to have substance. So if you're posting, it doesn't have to have 6 things happening on your timeline. If it's just 6 random things that you're posting throughout the day, I think it's really spending the time and sometimes investing in creating quality content that people want to see, that's useful and that is relevant to them. And so I think that is the biggest thing with working with brands is getting them to understand that it's not just about being there, but being there with a purpose. So
That's a great point. Many times you see, feeds just one post after the next, and it doesn't really mean anything, right? So it's definitely quality over quantity. Okay. One brand makes different connections with different sets of consumers at different points in time. And these connections are positive and sometimes negative. There's ups and downs on social media. These times are changing and they're changing dramatically. I'm sure everybody would agree. Yeah. And we just spoke about the quality over quantity. Right, so our young generation today is impatient. Alright, we all know that. Jamaica's leading demographic is below 35, which makes them impatient. You're still there? Okay. Marketers and communicators love patient consumers, but there are hardly any more patient people out there. We live in a generation of I want it now. Have you noticed how demanding consumers are, and how do you manage them?
Well, I think when you think about social media in general, it's very instantaneous. So it's basically now created an open dialogue with the customer, your consumers, and it's now their way to give you their feedback, their likes, their dislikes, and we even notice, we use a lot of different types of brands. So like a food brand, for instance, it's like bought food today and it tastes bad, and I want my money back, and why does it always happen or something? And you want to be able to respond to them instantaneously because we've had instances where they feel so dissatisfied. It's like any way that they have a chance to talk about it, they're going to go on Twitter, they're going to comment on every picture that is on the page for like the past 2 weeks. Anybody that says anything good, and they're like, well, I didn't have experience, and they look at the same person on every post going on the page. So I think the instantaneous nature of it is that you now get the chance to deal with these consumers right away. That they're there, and you have to, it almost shows you that you have to be on top of it, because if you leave it then I think it almost, because they know it's instantaneous too, and they want you to deal with them at the time, that you kind of have to keep on top of what's happening, what's the feedback, what's the perception of the brands online. And I think that social media is that open dialogue between you and your customer, and so it allows for that instantaneous dialogue.
So in regards to the question that you asked, you're absolutely correct. I think millennials are impatient, and I don't think they're impatient just because they are culturally, but I think we live in a very fast-paced environment. And when you look at the type of professionals that you have walking around the place, they all have their 3 smartphones, their tablets, their laptops, they're moving on meetings. Really and truly, we don't have a lot of time to really sit and relax and really go through all the things that we like. And I think that has known itself to us being kind of impatient. I think, like for example, at the beginning, what we've done is we realize that we have all patient people. The patient persons are the ones who like friends. They're the ones who like to sit down and they turn the page and they kind of run down the page. They like the feel, they like the sound. That's the patient person. Great. Then we decided that we have the persons who want the information invites and they're going to go to the website. But then we could not overlook social media because there are people who don't want to go to the website to go through all the links and go through the headlines. Ain't nobody got time for that. So then we went to social media, but then we realized that the persons who follow us on Twitter are not the type of persons who follow us on Facebook, who are not the same people who follow us on Instagram. So we realized that the person on Facebook, they want information in real time. They want to be able to have that dialogue, but chances are they're going to appreciate you putting pictures and a nice blurb. And then they're going to go through the comments and they're going to repeat or, they're going to argue back and forth. That's the Facebook us. The Twitter, they want you to sum up everything in 140 characters. Get it or less. Get it together. Keep it moving. So I think what is important is knowing your consumer. I think Carol spoke about it earlier. Knowing your consumer, figuring out where they are in the social media space, and then tailoring your product. Our social media manager, God bless her, she literally goes through and she tailors the content. She puts it out in different ways. Sometimes in the morning, she wouldn't put news that is necessarily negative. What she does is she puts something that is positive in the morning because that's good, and then she'll start. So it's really tricky. And as Christina says, it's not something about just being there, but it's really understanding who your users are and working towards the patient, and also having a platform for your not impatient, but your go-getters, your fast-paced professionals.
It's true, because a big part of the whole social media concept is Instagram. I mean, when Instagram just came out, a lot of people are saying, I can't put a video in 15 seconds. But no, you have an entire ad about a party, an event, a commercial offer, whether it is a phone deal, a supermarket deal, whatever, in 15 seconds, and you get the full information. What social media has forced us to do is to compress data and information for the consumer and target market. And as we realize, definitely as Terry said, our consumer base is significantly under the age of 35, and they're not watching anything too long. Anything over 60 seconds is way too long. And if they can't get the bite-sized information there, it's way too long. So with a company like ours, we have the Jamaica business have more than 800,000 consumers across our social media platforms. So you can just imagine how tedious it is to reply instantly to all these queries, and it can come from why my phone not talking at any time, something is happening down in multiple day, how can I get the discount on this, when's the new deal coming out, and there's a 24-hour team that responds to the questions as they come in. And the reason why we do this is for the same reason that Terry says. If you don't respond within a good time frame, then you have all negative comments. So we try to manage the expectations of our consumers and try to meet them as best as possible to see how they're interacting with us and what exactly they need. And a lot of companies now use that information to develop their consumer offerings. So they will come onto our page and say, okay, I need X amount of value because I do this every way. every other day. And then if there's a number of consumers actually asking for this product, then you have an opportunity to develop this product or commercialize it. So it's not only for sharing content and information, but from a business perspective, you have the opportunity to do this. Another thing you can look at for all the persons who are entrepreneur and we have a lot of young people in Jamaica starting up their businesses. You don't have to pay an expensive agency anymore to go out and do your market research. You can create your online marketing research. I think we have about 4 or 5 events this morning. People sending out questionnaires, what product you want, what do you feel about this product, will this work for you, etc. And then that is linked back to an instantaneous collation that generates a report from a social media platform. So it gives consumers a big opportunity to interact. And I see one of our famous athletes, who call him the name, have created an online store where you can just WhatsApp what you need from the store, and then you can purchase it. And this has been done on Instagram and Twitter. So the opportunity of social media has now moved away from just social content, but more into a more stronger commercial content, which is pretty important.
I actually wanted to comment on the urgency and immediacy that was talked about. It's a little unique in the food space. People will come on and tell you that it's their fault and they don't taste good. We had one lady who came onto the pages and told us that her ham wasn't very good, her Caribbean passion ham. And she complained profusely and how we ruined Christmas. Needless to say, she got a new ham. And we found her, we apologized. We didn't think it was a product problem, but it's not for us to say whether or not you cook well. We handled it because you can't have somebody making noise or complaining like that left unattended. We also had one case where a customer thought that she's allergic to MSG, and she said one of our products contains MSG and made us sick. I confirmed with the factory that one of our products have that in it, and expressed to her that your MSG allergy could have been from us, and we handled it off air as well. But it's very, very, very important when it comes to food products and because it's people's health. And it's health and safety. So you have to address it quickly and publicly, and then take it off air. So that persons who might see that post realize there's nothing wrong. You address it properly, you explain what that person will experience and take care of it. But then you also manage the person's problem and have no loss of consumer. So that person might be, they're going to tell a story. It might be the person that supermarket shops in the house, and they're going to use all of them. So I found that for us, we have to be very careful in some of the words about answering quickly in a full fashion. Because if you don't do it properly, they'll continue.
That's so true. And that actually brings us to that same point that Tanisha made earlier about the integration, right? It's not just solely digital or online, but also to even take your communications offline. And sometimes you do have to follow up with a consumer or a set of consumers offline as well. Okay, so today we have a plan B generation, right? They always have a plan B. The consumer today has 2 currencies, time and money. We're very good at understanding money, but not so good at understanding time. And the brand is a story that we want to read again and again and again. We have some powerful Jamaican brands on stage today. Terry, how would you define the Gleaner Company?
I'm so happy that person in this Jamaican will I like to say she old, but she not old. For over the last 180 years, the Gleaner Company has been known as providing, Jamaica's credible content. And, we were the ones who people go to first, or they'd be like, okay, what do they say? As in, is it confirmed by the Gleaner? If it's confirmed, then it's true. If it's in there, then it's true. If you did your common entrance and you're supposed to do the common entrance, do you have something to do the common entrance? All right, amen. When you did the common entrance, ladies and gentlemen, your schools used to tell you, Daniel, you got through to X school, and you were like, yeah, okay, whatever. But then you would get the Gleaner, you open it up, you go through all those names, you find your school, then you find your name, you look across, and only when you saw your name with the the school did you go?
Yeah,
Okay.
pass.
You guys look like you're Jesus students. You don't know a clue what's going on over there. And so that is what the viewer is. And over the years, as I said, our users have changed, our readers have changed. And so what she has done is she's saying, yes, I'm still going to give you that credible content because integrity, credibility is key apart from your content. But what we're going to try to do is make sure that we give you this credible content in an efficient manner across the platforms, wherever you are, we will deliver it. So I think I would define the Gleaner as Jamaica's leading news content provider, traditional news content provider, credible, definitely still with integrity, but no, efficient and using digital to reach all the platforms. Hope you know space for an innovator. Yeah.
Well, definitely from digital, it's total communications service provider. So yes, we provide phones and communication, but what we have also done is to integrate definitely most of our social media platform free to the consumers. And the reason why we do that is that we want consumers to consistently continuously communicate with their friends, family, etc. because that gets the information going around. And we incorporate that a lot with our social media platforms. So you can have Twitter, Instagram, and all the others free. So wherever you go across Jamaica, you'll be able to, or wherever you go across the world for that matter, you'll be able to interact with their platforms, you'll be able to interact with different brands with it. Your digital brand, our friends here from the food section, our friends here from the beauty section. Well, you're able to interact, and we want consumers to do that and keep their information at the fingertips. If you look at the consumers when you walk in the room today, and Tara said it because he was sitting right there, almost everybody in this room was on their phone. And there was something going on social media that they're not going to be as candid as possible. That you take your phones everywhere, to the shower, to the kitchen, to wherever else that was listed in that section that was listed in that comment. And the fact is that we want consumers to remain committed and connected to their phones, and that's why we have interacted a lot. And from a news perspective as well, there are online media houses that are popping up all over the world, and Loop in Jamaica is one of them. Who have significantly grown over the last couple of years, or less than a year, to have almost 500,000 consumers on the app because they want to interact significantly. Consumers want to be able to get information on their phone. And as we sit here, my phone is going off with updates coming out from what I said, sorry, no, or whoever else that is coming on. But that information that's coming up, that's what consumers want. We want information right there. And we're not going to read a full story. My father used to force us to read every Sunday. So when I can pick up my phone and just see the headlines and say, that does not reason, I'm not going to read the rest of the story. I want to read it if I am in traffic and I'm like, okay, let's see what's happening in the rest of the story. But the ability of our phones to give you that up-to-date information and content is very important. That's what we want to continue to deliver to our consumers.
Okay, so defining?
Yes, please define CB food.
All right, I'll actually do it with CB Group. So defining CB Group, we are a diversified agribusiness that is working to provide quality products and transform industries in Jamaica. A lot of persons are more used to the CB Foods brands, but CB Foods is a distribution company. So that is actually not a front-facing brand per se. A front-facing brand that CB Chicken, coupled for Caribbean Passion, Bad Dog, etc., as well as Nutrix. And even though they know the food brand, they don't know Nutrix is one of our biggest brands. It's the one that we export regionally, and that does a lot. So through Nutrix, we also do stuff like services for farmers. We provide baby chicks, we provide pig genetics, we provide improved livestock for farmers who farm for us and farm on their own or for any reason at all. You can get technical services to improve your livestock. You can get veterinary services. We can provide medicine as well as the feeds itself for the farmers. And then we also do our own processing, and then we provide food to the table. So it's a holistic approach that we have taken to the food industry and in trying to transform these industries. And that for us is that central platform. If it's not going to impact the industry itself and make poultry farming or pig farming better, not just the end product, but the whole country,
then we don't do it. We are trying to increase the rate of import substitution in Jamaica and reduce our dependency on imported products. So for us, it's really important that we see anything with the CB Group logo or the CB Foods logo, more importantly, that you know that it was grown in Jamaica, fed on Jamaican food, it was handled by Jamaicans and processed entirely here. So we see it at a nationalistic level, and just by the way, we're providing you with great products.
Very nice. Yeah. How do you define marketing?
So Market Me is a full service communications agency. I think many people get confused and they just automatically assume that we're digital, but it's not only digital, it's full service communication. So we do marketing, advertising, and of course digital plays a big part because I think, as we discussed that the digital age is with us, and so everybody needs to integrate that aspect into their marketing plans. And so what we usually do is with our brands, whether it be that they have their plans in place and they come to us for online or digital marketing, that we try to create a plan that is in alignment with what they already have. And I think, same thing, I go back to that they want a presence, but they don't understand that it has to have purpose and it needs to be in alignment with what they already have happening with their brands, what the messages are, what the activations are on the ground, and understanding that when you do a promotion in a supermarket or you have some kind of competition going on, wherever it might be, that's the content for your pages. These are the things that your consumers want to see. These are the things that let them know the brand identity, how you engage with their consumers. And so it's really just when it's kind of just we work with companies to understand digital, but also help them, whether it be marketing, advertising campaigns, a holistic approach, or sometimes it's just social media, online.
Great. So new channels have emerged. Consumers can now switch brands more easily. Now let's look at number portability. And the cost of switching is zero. Is this a loss to marketers? And how do you integrate this in traditional and online marketing?
It's an open option for consumers. Every day we give consumers more and more options in terms of what you want to do. And a lot of major brands, they suffer from this type of element in terms of there are so many things out there. For if you take from a news media standpoint, you can read news from so many companies across the world. You can, as it relates to probably happens, you can get comments from a couple of other companies in Jamaica in terms of where you want to go. So consumers will always want to have options in terms of where we are. How we are different is that we position our brands for our consumers. So as we said before, what we do is to tailor our product to fit the consumer needs and ensure that the consumer, whatever we have in our packages is what the consumer wants. So from time and time again, we have programs and offers that are set towards a certain number of consumers. So like a zero brand, in terms of definitely when digital zero, those towards consumers who are very interested in data platform. And those are young persons who want to get involved in data, who want to keep data. We have the 2-day data plan. Those data plans are targeted towards the consumers who have a smaller spend, but want to communicate over a smaller period of time, or a longer period of time for a smaller spend. So we have that interest that is going on. So we tend to always invest in plans that will get consumers interested in our program. And how do we integrate social media into that and social media platform is how we drive content. And of course, with all our platforms and our sponsorship, we target a sponsorship because we want consumers to believe in the programs that we do. And then we use the content from that platform to share it with our consumers on our digital pages. And consumers will always want to go back to our pages to see this is what they're seeing from the service. Interesting, interactive, it's different. And it creates that brand loyalty. So consumers, feel this connection to the brand and stay connected to the brand. So over the 15 years that we've been interacting with our consumers, our intent is always to provide what our consumers are looking for, and that's what we continue to find with our consumers. So they'll stay home with us.
Thanks, Kamal. Andrew, you touched on it a little bit, but give us some examples. Working in the food and beverage industry that sells fast-moving consumer goods, how do you try to keep your audience members engaged?
If you know, please tell me. That is one of our biggest challenge. With food, you have to try and engage visually, and you have to kind of make it repetitive. So unfortunately, you can't keep posting the same burgers, the same shots. One of the things that we've been doing a lot in Super Chicken is visiting restaurants. So showing persons what can be created with our brand out there, and persons really react to it. They'll comment and say, that's my favorite. They'll talk about the fact that they've had it before. We'll do videos and show short prep shots that chefs have done of it. We try and keep it fresh. We get some UGC. We recently had our food styles competition where we had persons submit shots of food they style at home or semi-professionally, and then we invited them to have almost like a cook-off. And we did it in a demo kitchen, and they didn't know what they're gonna have. We did it like chopped. They had this ingredients basket laid out, and they had to come up with a dish. They had to direct the photographer, then choose their final shots. We can post it, then persons voted, and then we give a prize to the person that selected. And most of them have started working for us in food styling or catering for us. So that's really worked out really well. I was always for new persons who are creating food out there, and some of them are, for example, have their own Instagram accounts with 3,000 to 7,000 followers, and will now work with our brand and are posting on their pages. One of the biggest takeaways I had when I went to social media and my own experiences working in social media is you're not going to get persons on the page as much as you will on an authentic page. No one really wants to follow on them. We are not Mercedes, we are not anything too young or hip. Exactly. You have to find persons they want to follow and have your brand being talked about and used there without them being there. So there's some great chefs out there who we're working with on all of our brands that are using their products and showing persons how to cook. And we're really finding that working with influencers is great. One of the only ones that really has persons having a following is, I think, Bad Dog. Bad Dog was born in the age of social media, and it's a fun brand. It's an edgy brand, and it's had an easier time having persons own it and talk about it on the phone. But with the others, it's very more creative. Because some people say chicken is chicken is chicken. So I have to show you in a creative way what we can do with it, and same thing for all of you guys.
Christina, from an agency standpoint, what are some of the concerns that brands have about taking their marketing efforts online in a world of likes and fans and followers and opinions?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is when you go online and you're going to have your social media page and you're going to say, I'm great. These are my products. You should buy this. You should do this because we are the best and we're Jamaican and this is what we have. I think when you have to find creative ways to create content that relates to consumers and speaks to them more, because it's easy for brands to say I'm great and we make the greatest products, but I think it's a lot more effective when it's organic and your consumers can say, I had this really great experience with the products. And that coming from people who actually use the products, who have interactions with it, is a lot more effective than having a brand just push a product on it. And I think it's finding that medium where even if your content is coming or you're working with people to create content that seems more genuine and relatable and relevant to the consumers, then I think that is one of the biggest challenges, because you don't want to seem too aggressive, and then it becomes monotonous if you're just like, this is what we have, and every day it's something, this is product A, product B, or this is what we sell. It's not interesting and it's not engaging, and I think it's just that medium showcasing what you have, but doing it in a very authentic way that relates to the consumers. And I think that's how you get consumers to be loyal. And that this studies actually say if you're a consumer and you follow a brand, more than likely it's the brand that you will use. So it's not like I'm going to follow like Clorox bleach because I just want to
You use Ajax.
or whatever it might be, that usually when you follow a brand online, it's something that actually has use in your life. You're not just going to follow a brand for the sake of following a brand. It's usually because you have some sort of experience relationship.
Good point. Terry, back in the day, a journalist wrote his or her story. It was printed, that was it. In 2015, journalists must be connected online to be first with breaking stories or using their Twitter timeline to gauge feedback on an issue. How are journalists at Convener coping with social media? And how is it changing how they break stories? And is there a social media policy guiding how Convener uses social media?
Thanks for that. Absolutely. Back in the days, really the process was just for paper. You read your paper for the morning and that's where your news really stopped. But the truth and fact is that life goes on. Things happen, things change because life is dynamic. So naturally, as these things continue to happen, instead of waiting for the press cycle the very next morning, we decided that we had to develop a strategy, which was our social media strategy. No, our journalists not only need to meet that deadline in terms of print, but they need to also think online. So before, we used to think print, then online, then social media. Now, and this was another takeaway that I learned at the International News Media Association. Now, we're thinking online, social media, print. Because at the end of the day, people want to know what's changing, why is it changing, who is it affecting, am I being affected in real time? So our journalists now need to make sure that the content is credible, because sometimes you want to break the news first, but sometimes breaking the news first isn't always the necessary thing, and I'll tell you why. You might hear, oh, here's a very bad example, 3 men died. Okay, great, let's just tweet it out. Oh, okay, we're the first to do it. But then you hear, actually, it wasn't 3 men, it was actually 2 and 1 got injured. Then what happens? You now have to go back and explain to all of your followers, yeah, we made a mistake. So for us, although we try to do it in real time, we still sometimes use the news go out before we tweet it out. And sometimes people say, you didn't hear about this. And we say, yeah, we heard about it, but we are doing our checks. So go back to it. The content still needs to be credible. All our journalists need to understand what social media is, and not just from the Gleaner's perspective, but your own personal pages. Because again, you also represent your brand, and it's something that we even teach when children come on tours. We're trying to let them know, guys, your personal brand can also make you an asset or a liability to your company. So you find that our journalists now have the opportunity to get the Twitter handle, get the Facebook, get the Instagram, and they're now doing this information on their own. Social media policy, you keep your password, like that is so important. Our gatekeepers ensure that only a certain amount of people have access to it, and it's usually just the editors who have access to it. It's a hand, you can't, when you have certain brands, really and truly, you can't afford for the wrong information to go out, because it just takes one screenshot. It takes one screenshot to really ruin the reputation that you have. So yes, our journalists can't be one-tracked at all, and we're also multimedia, meaning a journalist is not just social media, but a journalist might have to now get a phone, get their phone, and set up an interview just like this. It is now much further than just social media, but it's video, it's audio, and putting all of that together.
Thank you very much, Terry. And I want to thank our panelists as well. I think we had a very informative and the key word for today, engaging conversation. Now we're going to take some questions from the audience. And before we take the questions, though, I'd just like for each panelist to tell us how we can find you and your brand or brands online, so that our audience members have that information. And if you're not following them already, you can start following them.
Okay, we're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at MarketBJA.
Do I give that a top 3?
Yeah, sorry.
So, at CB Chicken, at Couple Pork, at Bad Dog Sausages, and Smart XJ. If you, I'm a bit of a waterfall show, so Juju Ray is me. But don't retweet me.
This is pretty simple. Is at this Jamaica, and that's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and at Luke or at Sportsmans. This is Sportsmans. Speaking of this one.
Our handle has really caused people to now call us Jamaica Vino instead of the Vino Company. But you guys can find us on Twitter at Jamaica Vino, Instagram, Jamaica Vino, Facebook, Vino Jamaica, YouTube, yes, Jamaica Vino. So anything you guys need, as well as our mobile apps. But Jamaica Vino really is the standard handle for all our brands.
Great, thank you. I hope you guys wrote that down. Okay, great. Well, I thank you very much. And actually, we're going to have a quick change before we take questions and answers.
So I can tell that there will maybe a handful of questions for the comments. So what we'll do is we'll have the keynote now, and then we'll get back to her with the questions. So you can really get the full answer. All right? So, in planning this event, I thought about what would make this complete, and maybe having the most connected voice on the line in the political space in terms of understanding the different platforms. She's very connected on Instagram. I mean, yesterday, if you follow her, Lisa Anna NYC, she asked a question. If you are the Minister of Youth, what would name one thing you would do? And I guess it had over 120 responses, including her lifetime instant responses to people who were responding what they would do as Minister of Youth and Culture. So that was very interesting to me, and that's like I knew that. So in terms of what she's doing on Twitter and Facebook, she is the best person from a political point of view that could bring a keynote to this. So please help me welcome the Minister of Youth and Culture.
Thank you, Cor. Good afternoon, everybody. In 2005, in November, there was one tweet that went out which actually said, "We've just made history." And that was the CEO Barack Obama's social media campaign. And he did that via tweet. At that time, Twitter had about 5 million followers, and Facebook had about 150 million. And that was back in 2008. Today, Facebook has about 1.3 billion followers, and if Facebook was a country, it would be the size of China. So you're actually moving in very exponential times. And one of the very, very crazy things that certainly I have to do as a Minister of Youth and Culture is to recognize those times and contextualize the in-demand jobs that will be created and to really teach our young people, and perhaps even from primary right the way up to university graduates, what that really means in an era of social media. So apart from being the undesirable of career professions, which is really a politician, you also have to temper that. So when Cor had asked me to speak today, it was why? Why do you possibly want me to come and speak to this event? I'm not only outside of your age group that uses social media, but I'm also a politician, and nobody typically wants to hear from politicians, particularly that group of young people and that nexus who uses social media. So I wanted to really convey to you a couple of things. One, social media has taken off in the political landscape as well. Gone are the days of perhaps JFK, when you were positioning JFK as a president, which is Camelot, family, handsome, etc. And you utilize TV campaigns and ads to be able to do that. And certainly when I was growing up, you had the same thing. Today, it's which politician or which news feed is actually fighting over the hashtag that is making policy. Perhaps in my situation, it's either phonics or a swimsuit or something else. And I noticed that the cleanup typically uses very sensational things about some politicians to sell their newspapers, especially their social media newspapers, but I digress. Here are the elements of social media that affects a politician's life. The first one is that today there are about 100 billion Google searches, and it really is the #1 search engine in the country, in the world. And this year you'll probably have about 5,000 new bits of information that are coming out. And even though I say 5,000 new bits of information, it's really called 3.5 zettabytes of information. That's more information in the world today that has been produced more than the previous 5,000 years. So there's a lot of information actually coming to people. The politician now has to position themselves in the realm of that possibility. And you look at a couple of things. One, you have to look at what is your voting population. So for those of us who have constituencies, and I have the largest constituency in the country, I have more than 7 constituencies, and I'm a 2-term MP, it's one, how do you increase your voter turnout? 2, how do you keep those voters that you had before, but also talk to those voters that you can't talk to on a regular basis. And you can do that via social media. Now, the other thing that you can do is do the same things that the media is doing, because for a politician, you can raise money online, but you also have to raise it via, you can raise smaller bits online with the users that use social media. But for the traditional media, those are where you know how to position yourself so that the traditional persons who are seeing your work, etc., can say, well, you know, she makes sense, or he makes sense, or this is somebody that we kind of like, or we feel touchy-feely. The interesting thing about social media and a politician, though, is that it can make or break. So try don't put any pictures, make any derogatory statements. You have to temper your spontaneity and your emotions with very, very responsible posts and very responsible things to say. Now, a while back, when I was doing my master's in communications, I actually did a comparative analysis between Gleaner and online Gleaner back in about 2000, early. And at that time, online Gleaner was in a very embryonic stage. And then I went to Singapore and Malaysia, and I looked at virtual technologies and how we could use them for teaching and learning. So this is something that I am familiar with. So if I said politics won't work, I'll certainly go back into communications. But what is very, very interesting about it is just how it has developed so quickly. And it will continue to develop quickly, because in 2012, there were 80 million registered voters in the United States who actually used social media to get their political information. And I imagine that the same thing will happen in Jamaica come the next election, and it will continue to happen because young people want bite-sized information. So there's a lot of different things that it can do for the politician. There's a lot of things that it can do also for young politicians, because those of us who have to survive in a realm of an already blood sport industry have to also carve out a niche for ourselves. And typically, the easiest way to sometimes do it is in social media. Now, here's where the rubber hits the road. It hits the road because you could position yourself in social media as a politician, but if they don't like you, then just don't like you. So there's a sincerity in what you do as well, which will determine how your social media following actually likes you or dislikes you. And one of the things as a politician, you can't be afraid of criticism. I tell people that criticism actually makes me stronger, because you have to know what people are thinking, especially as it relates to children, as it relates to your constituency. When I'm crossing out the road, when I'm saying nothing, you have to still be able to navigate those things, answer it, and be honest about it. So if you never get to fix the road, that's up to it. If this is what is happening in terms of child abuse, acknowledge it, but say what is actually happening. But the other thing that people want to see is they, just like a brand like CB or Vino, the politician today is a consumer brand. Whether we want to believe it or not, they want to see what you're wearing, they want to see how you're carrying yourself, they want to see how you speak, all of those different things. So you have become a brand. And whether it is the brand of your party or not, you can actually become very neutral in the minds of people depending on the social media platform that you use. So my hands-on go-to social media platform is Instagram. It's easy, it's visual, it's easy, and you don't have to spend a lot of time on Instagram. You can check it, when you need to. Snapchat I won't get onto because Snapchat, the age group, I really don't need my son at 14 looking at certain things. Perhaps when, in another 3 or 4 years. But I don't think also Snapchat will actually get to a level where people are using it in politics. I think if you want to do smear campaigns or propaganda campaigns, Snapchat is the right thing to use because things disappear. No, I'm not that kind of politician, so I certainly wouldn't be using it. But I think in terms of Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, those are the choices that people are using now. And I don't think we will get to the realm of even discussing the things of internet voting or the like, and we don't have the platforms yet or the legislation to actually give money online for campaigns. And with the legislation, you can spend too much money on elections. You can spend $2 million in real terms. Just to let you know that elections will cost $2 million, it costs more. But you can actually navigate it and use it to your best advantages. So I came through just to let you know that get involved in politics as well. It's not an easy profession. It's not something that a lot of people look at. It requires a lot of stealthy stratagem. People, I think, look at me sometimes and think, well, she makes it look easy. It's a 7-day-a-week, 24-hour job. You have a constituency to run, you have a ministry to run, and there are wheels within wheels, and you always have to be ahead of even your own internal political opponents. And so there's a lot of things that go into the ability to survive it and to go forward in it. And I think social media has also helped to get your messages out, because certainly that helps to cushion some of the other things that are out there. And you also can have another conversation in social media while the traditional media is having a completely different conversation. So typically, you always have two different realms of possibilities, or even several going on in your life as a politician. The last thing I would add here is 22 years ago when I won this world. At that time, there was not even an internet. There was when the information superhighway came out in I believe 1994, 95. Things were a lot easier back then. So I actually led a protest at Miss World, and I walked all of the girls off the stage, and we had a sit-out. If there was social media today, everybody would have known that. It would have been filmed, it would have been posted, it would have been tweeted. Miss Jamaica is a revolutionary, we don't know what we're going to do with her, etc. But it happened. Jamaicans didn't know it happened, but it happened. So you can actually see the progression of how things work in social media. So certainly from my perspective, I don't know, I see how you all use it in terms of your brands, but there are also not a lot of people who use it in the political realm either. I've been fortunate to have a following on Instagram and have a following on Twitter and have a following on Facebook, which are good followings, and I don't take it for granted. But not a lot of politicians use it, and I really think that they should. So thank you for listening, and have a really successful conference. Congratulations, Cora and the team. And I enjoyed listening to all of you and what you have to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Minister Hannah. So now we're going to take questions from the audience, and ask that when you come to the mic, please state your name, what you do for a living, and your question. You have a mic for the audience? We have a mic for the audience? I always have many questions, but don't fair. We should ask a question. Okay, I'm gonna ask you a question. Okay, here's my thing. Everybody knows? Oh, I'm Lindsay McDonough. Hello, everybody. Okay. I am a big supporter of a better Jamaica. Whether it's green or orange, I don't care. It's Jamaica. What I find through social media is I've begun to hate politicians, and I've cursed them out a lot till my father called me one day and goes, "Lisa, please stop doing that. Stop." I said, "Okay, Daddy." But my point is, I know that you get cursed off a lot because of what you post. And I will admit that when I look on your post, I don't curse, but I more feel like you know the person, if that makes sense. You feel like you know you. But I realize that you don't answer back, or you're not, so you don't retaliate, you don't cuss online, you're not defensive at all, which I rate. And Julian is also like that. So my question to you is there a reason why you don't, okay, stop before that. Is there people online, no wait, because I don't want to call my name, you know how hard that is, oh my God. That's the problem, I'm not trying to, me and you cuss a lot. But it's my thing, is that I feel like, when I go on Twitter especially, I feel like politicians are there for their agenda. And that's fine, that's great, you can go on. But sometimes I think that being there for their agenda, they look on them as stupid because they're fighting against things not necessarily for the better of Jamaica, but for their own good. So my question to you is, sometimes when people ask you questions, you don't respond. How do you choose what to respond to and what to post and that kind of thing?
Well, the first thing, thank you, Lindsay. The first thing, I don't want people to buck up who I am. So I don't want you to see one persona in public and then all of a sudden something comes out and you say, well, we didn't know that about you. So yes, I go to the beach. Yes, I have a value system. Yes, I have a child. Yes, I get tired, etc. And I do answer some of the questions, particularly those that I find are data-driven. The ones that are purely emotive, I tend to stay away from. But typically, I'm also not a person who's defensive. And my natural personality is not to get into a confrontation with anybody. So I've always maintained a very calm personality in terms of dealing with things. And it's the same thing on social media.
But if the opposition opposes something that you say, right? And they're on it and they're listen.
Well, that is the opposition.
You just don't.
No, that's the opposition's job.
No.
So there are things. And you have to also know, I think one of the benefits I have is that I've studied communications. So you also have to know when people, like certain media houses, are using your brand to sell their newspaper. And you also have to know when not to make a story a story. So if I answer the opposition, it's going to become a story, and they have content. So you have to be able to analyze all of those things. People think I have a publicist. I don't. No, I don't. I don't have a PR team. I don't have a publicist. I don't have any of that. All of what you see is me sitting down and doing it because I have the expertise to do it. And I think people don't realize that that's what I did. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chairman. Any other questions?
I am Bianca. Bianca Wells. Here today, I guess, in my context, more as a blogger, but just general digital media. No, this is really more for my three brands up here. Social media obviously is a way for you to get across the values of your brand.
And one of the things we've started to see more recently in Jamaica is somebody mentioned at some point, I think it was Terry maybe, where employees' personal brands can be assets or liabilities. And we're starting to see the impact of that, where brands are now being faced with taking some amount of responsibility for the behavior of their employees online. Just this afternoon, before I came here, there was an incident where a local media company was forced to make a statement based on some comments made by one of their employees. It was not the email. So not also. But this was not one of their marketing employees or their brand managers or anything like that. This was another employee who was publicly an employee of the organization. And they found themselves having to come out and say, well, his statement does not represent the values, etc. And so I was just curious how your brand, if you have put that into your social media policy, so not just the employees who actually have responsibility for social media, but are you actually paying attention to what your other employees are doing online and how you handle if there's some sort of.
Okay, so speaking personally, when I got more seriously involved in social media as a job, I actually first worked in international relations after I did my master's degree. I went, when I started marketing, or marketing again, after my master's, I went and I cleansed my accounts. Before I started working, I went on each platform, I took about an hour, and I went back about a year and a half into Twitter, and I cleaned everything I could find. My Instagram got scrubbed of anything that I thought that was nefarious, because you don't know where you're gonna work, you don't know what corporate values are going to get into. So you have to be cognizant of that. And also when I was 16 or 17, 18, social media was just starting. So you weren't sure of the rules, how to be careful. It's different when you're getting older and you're in mid-20s, late 20s, and you don't know the rules of what you can and cannot do. And you're more careful now, we have to worry about before. So that's first. Then second, worry about the values of the company. There's some companies that are very face-driven, and there's some that aren't, but none of them want bad behavior. And the worst if you're front facing, so you have to worry about that. So that's how I try to be careful about it. My full name is not on any of my handles, you don't find it that easy, but it's there, and I do tweet on Instagram, my brand. Yeah, so that's it. But I do tweet on Instagram about my brand, so that's a choice. So I'm very careful that it can't be something nefarious or vulgar right after a brand post, or right before a brand post. It really works. You have to look about what your other employees are doing. It's no different from walking out in a brand new t-shirt and cussing out somebody on the road or insulting somebody while wearing a brand. You are always on, and you have to think about it.
Very good point.
Thank you for the question. I'm just going to second what he said. I mean, okay, so I'm a social media lover, okay, and I'm extremely opinionated about sports, politics, everything that goes across the board. And one of the things that even I, as Terry Curl had to do is really filter and to not necessarily, I mean, Marky, if you follow me on Twitter, you're going to see me say, why Golden State boy? You're going to see that. You're going to see the A's and the O's, because that's just my personality. However, what I found is that and then as employees, we certainly have to filter, and maybe that very first thought is not necessarily the first thing that we should be typing. We really just need to be like, okay, this is what I would type, but then I would actually delete that. And this is what I really need to say. Now, in regards to brands, and I think brands need to do a better job. Again, the legal company is really old, and there are a good amount of us managers on social media, but not a lot of us are using it in the manner that maybe I use it. And I think it needs to be a little bit better. I think HR needs to do better in terms of not trolling or lurking necessarily, but they certainly need to do a better job at really going through and seeing who has, who is using their platforms in a responsible manner. For us, for example, we certainly have a policy, not just for social media, but just in general, just like what Andrew said, if it's just like being in your uniform, school or work or otherwise, if you do or say anything that can bring the company in disrepute, if you say something that would possibly be libelous, even though you're saying it, that they can link it to the company that you work for. Once you do that, then you certainly have to come in and have a talk. Some people don't always know this, so we have to say, listen, if it's really bad, you have to come in, we have to speak. This is how we should have better handled the situation. But I think more brands need to pay attention to their social media platforms.
Definitely going to reiterate some of that in terms of a lot of companies now are developing a fully unique communication policy that does only cover interviews and etc. But also cover the policy that how you interact with social media if you're employed by a particular company, and because it can cost companies millions of US dollars in terms of losses just for one word that you say because you are the brand of the company you represent. And one of the other things that most people haven't really discussed, I know Minister Julian has been working significantly on that as well as these of the paper, is how people use your name to drive negative publicity. So you can be a brand of an organization, but then someone creates a fake account in your name, and then you're the one who gets into trouble. But there in Jamaica, there needs to be more push in terms of how we look at the legal aspect of how people use your name in a negative or dark way to damage your brand and product. And how do you protect? And I guess Minister Hannah will go to how do you protect our young people against some of those things? Because it gives into a lot of young people. A lot of our young people have been attacked on social media, and their personal brand, not just a company brand. We're talking about a young person's personal brand and have been attacked on social media. And you can listen to more and more young people as they say you sometimes you get broadcasts and say that, oh, my account has been hacked, or for example, the person was Andrew Brown, and say person might create a new account called Andrew Brown 1, and then you believe it's Andrew's same images, etc., that they have taken down from their page. So we as brands, as personal brands, have to find a way to protect ourselves and differentiate ourselves from the general public. And from a corporate brand, we have to be able to communicate with our internal consumers, which are employees, to say, whatever you put up there on the platform, you have to be careful because it not only damages your personal brand, but also damages the company brand.
And those are good points, definitely coming from an employee side, but even as an employer, as an entrepreneur, you have the responsibility of making sure what you put out there does not negatively represent your team, your employees, your company as well. And then of course there's a personal side where it might also reflect on your family, your friends as well. So it's always good to keep those things in mind. Do you have any more questions?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kashka Thompson. Quick question for everybody or anybody who wants to answer. How has social media helped with your company's ROI or ROR? And how is it that you have, or how do you calculate that for the brands? Thank you.
Who wants to start?
Okay, so for example, back in the day for the Gleaner company, we print, we distribute, we make money based on those sales, and we kept it moving. With social media now, as mentioned before, the newsroom, I call it the beehive. When you walk in there, we have this massive digital screen. And at any point in time, I think you guys were in a meeting with me the other day, and they thought it was like, it was really cool because when you come in, we can show you, for example, which articles on the Gleaner have been read the most for the week, which articles on the Star have been read the most for the week. Then we're able to show you across the Gleaner and the Star which were the top stories, but not just the week, but the month. And we're able to use those analytics, and what we basically use is that shows us the importance. Now, is it sports? Is it human interest? Is it politics? Based on what we see from the stats, the newsroom basically goes back, they meet and they say, okay, this is a hot topic. We might have thought that this was a story. This is not the story. Then when we check social media now and we're seeing the questions, we're saying, okay, there are additional questions that users and readers are asking that maybe we didn't cover in the first story. So now we use that, and what we notice is that when we do things and when we follow the analytics and we follow through with the articles, it also increases sales because people now go, so that's the reason why. So we're actually not just going, oh, we have a lot of followers and oh, they're saying this, but we're actually looking at what they're reading, what they're liking, what they're clicking, and then we're following through. And we're seeing that when we do that, we definitely get those.
It's not the physical newspaper that's selling it, the ads on social media that's selling it. I'm asking in terms of your ROI. Your increases in sales are not from your physical newspaper. You're able to demonstrate from your social media platforms in terms of what you're going to generate and start selling more advertisements so that people come on your page.
Absolutely.
That's where it comes from.
No, that goes as well. But what we realize is when people actually read the newspapers, I mean, you'll always have, for example, people who buy your newspapers or when it's distributed. You can't always tell, for example, how many people necessarily read one. But what we realize is that when we're following up a story or we're publishing a particular story, we actually realize when we're, like, for example, the GSAT stories. The GSAT stories came out, we started publishing it. And because there's general interest in the GSAT story, but because we had such a wonderful amount, we actually do see.
I think what I'm trying to get back from my own thing, that's a seasonal story. So everybody can expect every year GSAT will actually have increases in sales, both in the physical newspaper and you probably push some ads.
Right.
But I'm trying to understand, and from the question, and I'm not sure.
Cash flow.
In terms of your online platforms, when you have the connectivity and the attention, are you able to sell your advertisements at premium prices?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. So whenever we do have those hits and our advertisers come to us, we can definitely say, listen, these are your premium pages, these are the hits that you get, this is the reach that you get, this is the reach that you're getting globally, where you're getting your reach. So if you want to, for example, geo-target the US, you're getting that in this particular number. So we definitely use that for ROI online as well for advertising. Absolutely.
Okay, I'm gonna take two more questions. We have the gentleman behind Lindsay.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ryan Evenings from Electricity Sales and Marketing Department. And I guess your answer to the question was just an answer based on media. But I'm thinking in terms of yeah, so your answer was related to media. But I guess I want to get an answer from maybe Digicel or CV on an end consumer product. How do you get there? How do you measure your return on investment?
Very command.
So for us, significant. So how do we get them to interact with our product is that it comes back down to content and continuously. So what we do on a weekly or daily basis is we analyze all our posting to see where consumers more like what they tweet more, what they like more, or what they interact with more. And then from that we develop a new strategy for the next day, for the next week, etc. And that allows us to keep content going. It also allows us to create the continuous content strategy for the next year or for the next day. Because you want, as we said earlier, you want consumers to follow your page, not for only the commercial elements that you post, but for an interactive person. And like Andrew said before, which is Stevie, he said that a lot of consumers don't want to follow your pages just for the post that you that's there, but you don't actually want to follow your post what's interesting. And brands such as ours are very difficult getting consumers to continuously look at our brands. If you look at other telecommunication brands across the US, etc., they probably don't have the same traction as the digital brand because of the content that we post to attract the consumers continuously. So what we really track is the strong awareness and connectivity because we want to keep the consumers close to us and want to provide them information.
Thank you, Kamal. The gentleman in the white shirt, white and black shirt.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyle Algren. I'm a marketing student and incoming vice president for the Marketing Association. Okay, backtracking a bit to the discussion earlier
about brands and social media. It's so ironic that this is being discussed because there's a prime example of this morning, where a local, he's a comedian, he was being attacked by a DJ about his sexual orientation. It so happened that the comedian responded to him and said that hey, a popular radio station that he works at isn't really popular. So apparently, the radio station searched their handle and saw what was going on, and they posted a statement online saying that they're going to take corrective actions against that person because of his association. And so it's just a primary example to show that what you say on social media is what you're affiliated to affects everything. So you have to be really careful. But really and truly, my question is, as it relates to social media engagement and timely responses, I've noticed cases where a person would ask a question or pose a valid query, but they get no response. So what are ways in which social media managers or companies, ensure that persons do get their timely responses? Because it does affect your customers and it does affect how someone feels about your brand.
Good question. Andrew?
Okay. Well, with some of the platforms, you actually have the question and answer rate and engagement rate. So with our brands or contractors, some of the brands that we most, some are contracted, do reports, and some of the reports will say question and answer rate 100%, 80%, 70%. It's difficult. You don't usually have enough manpower to be crafting strategy and answering all the questions all the time, but you try to catch up with them at least by the end of the week. If you look through them, you can see which ones are burning, and then you try and do those first, then you get to the others later. And you really try and leave them hanging. There will always actually be some money. It's almost impossible. Largely are. I can't imagine trying to answer the questions on that page. Yeah, but 24/7, I'm just at the customer care center, like 500 people that's typing constantly. And a lot of the times, you sometimes don't want to answer the question. Like, ask you some things and you go, really? And some of the statements that come on, like on our core brands, you will find some members of particular religious communities coming on and just blazing fire all the time. And you're like, why? And they already pose a question while blazing the fire, and you have to answer it. But you have to, when you get to it. Something you try really hard to encourage, and I wish all of our brands were better, to be quite honest.
Just very briefly, for us it depends. I mean, you always want to try to respond to them in as timely a manner as possible, especially when you have various people who are also on your or are your social media managers. Sometimes you get a query and you want to just be able to respond, but sometimes you have to actually defer. You have to find the person who's in a better position to answer that question, and not all the time you're going to find that person right away. So sometimes you won't necessarily give a good answer or I should say give a timely answer, but what I always say is for brands like us who somebody might ask a particular question or ask a question about a person or name, they actually include someone's name, then we might have to tell them, okay, we got your question, duly noted, we're gonna get back to you soon come. I think that is better than just ignoring them, but sometimes we have to go to the newsroom and say, hey, someone asked a question and I don't think we just want to necessarily respond to them, because then that response becomes a response on behalf of the company. So sometimes some brands may not necessarily respond, not because they don't want to, but because they certainly need to find that person who can authorize a particular response.
I was actually hoping to kind of move that question to Minister Annie. How do you manage as a cabinet minister your personal opinion on your personal page, because it is personal, it also has ministry work, when it might deviate from a cabinet position, or how do you decide whether not to wade into a particular fray? For example, when you waded into Kwane's discussion about the President of the United States, you chose that knowing that there's going to be a backlash and a firestorm there. And then if there's a cabinet position that's a hot topic, persons are asking, and you know you have a new position, mention it, how do you manage that?
Well, the first thing with cabinet is you have collective responsibility. So in terms of deviations, you you stay away from questions like that. I mean, if I'm asked a particular position on a cabinet decision, it's a cabinet decision. So it's a collective responsibility of the government, and that's what has been done. In terms of things, for instance, and this is where brands also come into play. If a brand asks a question and a traditional media house needs news, whether radio, newspapers, or TV, they can actually look on your commentary and take that as a source. And they can use it and they can prolong a discourse and a conversation. So you also have to be very careful about how you say what you say. The issue with Chronics is that I do have culture. And so it wasn't a personal opinion. It was a position also on policy. Because if you have persons, and I like Chronics a lot. I know the lyrics that I music and me and Keflon is good friends. So it's not a situation that I am coming out against Chronics, but you have to temper, for instance, there's a number of young people out there that you're trying to guide in being responsible in terms of the outbursts that they make, knowing fully well that they will also have to position themselves in certain markets. And so you're teaching that value system, and you're also trying to say to an entertainer, look, culturally, this is not the best position to take at this time. And so my commentary was not personal. It was not something that was meant to obfuscate my responsibilities as a minister. But I think we also have a responsibility as legislators to speak not only on paper and policy, but to impart values in the country. And I think whereas in Singapore, values are legislated by the state, we don't have that luxury in a democracy. And so I feel it is also incumbent on me to also steer somebody when I think that they're deviating from a particular position that would carry them on a wrong path. It creates a sensational mix of conversations, but I think the traditional media does that. Because if you read the conversations between Chronics and myself on Instagram, it's not hostile. But the media, the traditional media, makes it hostile. No, because I know, Terry, I know what, sorry.
are always saying something, and we always try to reply. And we try to manage that as much as possible off the main platform. But there are consumers who, even though you manage to get the scenes, will still come onto the platform for whatever reason they're doing that for, whether it's a legitimate reason or not. So we try to manage that as best as possible.
So do you give them compensation sometimes? It depends.
It depends on the situation. If it's a phone that was purchased from us and it's not working, then our technical team will look at it, evaluate it, and decide, well, and this is a legitimate claim, so we need to replace it, etc.
Okay, just one more. Just one more.
Okay, hi, Raquel from the Best Dressed Chicken and Remy Jamin. So yeah, the center of attention, right? I have a question. A lot of corporations probably don't view social media as important, and this is from maybe an executive level. You know, a lot of us are evolving where we've added social media because at our organization, we don't have a social media department. We have to outsource. What do you think about that? Should it be something that should be involved in the corporation in terms of in the marketing department, there should be a social media rep, or should be continued to outsource?
For me, it depends on the size of your organization and your objectives. So for an organization like ours, we have a quite sizable internal team that manages it. I've worked for a couple of organizations who outsource it, and the reason is that based on the headcount and your overhead situation, based on your company strategy, it might be easier to have a communications manager or assistant manager oversee an external agency to do it. But either one can work. It's how the organization develop their strategy, communication strategy, and social media strategy, and how do you work with the external partners. It is that you outsource these external persons to deliver the strategic communication you want. From our end, in terms of internals, an organization, we have a number of departments which have been normally outsourced under our roof. So we have media buying, we have marketing communication, which is developing artwork, etc. So it makes sense for us to have a social media person inside, because then we can have a full team discussion. From another company that I used to work for, is that they outsource their media buying, they outsource their social media, they outsource their creatives. So then you just pull all your companies together and you bring them all at once and have them go and work out what this campaign needs to look like, and you have a social media platform, you have an execution platform, you have etc. So it makes it more centric. Yeah, actually, they did, and I say when we just started about investing in social media, it was what was ROI manager back at the time? Why was the ROI? Why do I need to invest in it? But after the first online activation, I think it was around Babyface that was coming to Kingston, Jamaica at the time, when we gave females the opportunity to have a dinner with them within traveling fans and style, VIP, etc., etc. The growth of social media was tremendous, and from there, then a lot of persons started to in the organization started buying into social media. So what they did afterwards was allow the assistant brand managers to have the responsibility for tracking social media pages and investing and pushing the social media pages, and then channel some of our traditional media investment to ensure that we start to connect to young people on social media, because it was seen as the new avenue to communicate to our consumers.
That's a very good question, and definitely some good points come out. I think what a company should look at as well is, do we have enough content that warrants having an internal team or even outsourcing as well? Because that alone, the content generation, takes up a lot of the time. So do we have the content? Do we need to generate the content? Do we have the resources to do that in-house, or do we need to have an external team help us do that? Those are just some of the questions to ask as well, in addition to the things that Kamal mentioned.
I would also add that there are benefits though to having an internal team manager, because then
you are more intimate with the information, and you can, social media is instant. So you want to make sure that once something is happening that affects the organization, you want to make sure it is out there. So you have to look at your organization and what you stand for, what you want to put out, and then you make a determination.
Great, I actually disagree.
Me too.
And in a good way. Chicken is bored. And burgers are bored. And what you will do is have institutional indifference if you have it in-house. That's just my opinion. And what you will find is that the corporate structure coming from the top is going to infiltrate what you do in-house. So what you're going to have, and I know your organization well, conservative, old, stable. It's better for you to have it out of your establishment because one, the creatives who are outside are younger. They know what's happening. They can position your brand in different ways. And chicken on the side of the road. There are some things that I think can happen. I think if you put it in house, it's not going to have the kind of thing that you want. Other brands perhaps need it in house, like a Digicel, etc. But you're offering meat. How interesting is meat in house? So those are some of the things I would say that you would have to think about. And also, what you can have externally as well is looking at what the data is saying. Because primarily, there are two brands, right? And you have to be able to identify really how you're going to compete in a market with meat.
Are you differentiating?
Can I make a comment just being for us, I think back to what Mr. Hannah said is that you get brands that come to you that are very unsexy. And it's now, how do you take an unsexy brand and make it sexy on that? Yes, or just make it sound. But so it's
Yes.
So basically, it is that it's taking chicken or whatever it might be that is traditionally. Why do I want to look at chicken all day? You know, what is interesting about that? And I think you do get brands that traditionally just want to stay with what they know. And it's like, okay, we have this marketing plan, we're going to roll it out online, and it doesn't work. What you're doing on the ground for your billboards or TV, that's not necessarily going to work online. And being able to have outside eyes that take what you have put into place already and then put their own ideas and creatives into it and say, okay, what you have is good, but this is how it's going to work better online. This is how we can create content from what you have. Or whether they create a campaign that is in alignment with what you have, but with something different. And we've actually worked on projects where we were creating a campaign for online only, and then it ended up being an advertising campaign on the ground. So we were creating an online campaign for social media only, and they liked so much that they rolled it out and the billboard, TV, and everything, and it became their brand campaign. So I mean, it can work where sometimes you have outside ideas and you need that injection of fresh eyes and fresh ideas into the brand to create.
Is that when I look around the room, everybody's under 40, right? No, apart from Francois. But the movers and shakers on this side are under 40. And what you're finding is that the legitimacy of what is happening in terms of new career options, particularly for young people, are there. And I think there's a lot of hope in Jamaica because you can have spin-offs from these kinds of opportunities that young people need to hear more about. That's why at Edna Manley, they can't keep their digital students and their visual art students before they complete their degrees. Same thing with musicians. So the whole thing is flipping on its head. the traditional areas of career opportunities are also moving because of things like social media and communications and technology, etc. So my takeaway from this, and I am emboldened by it, is that I realize that the messages that we've been sending as a ministry are correct, and I'm happy to see that all of you are involved in a profession that will not only take Grand Jamaica forward, but that will give you the best opportunities for leverage. Even the parties that are out there are making money. So there's a whole genre of young people now who are in party business, and a whole new set of young people whose body clocks operate from 10 at night until 5 in the morning. And so one of the things that we also have to do as a cultural ministry is keep some of our cultural buildings open at different times to also facilitate our young people coming in, like our youth information centers. This is just a different body clock that they're all operating on because they're diverting into new businesses. So I'm very heartened today because I see Lindsay, I see Christina, and I know these people from there. I've seen them since they were little. And it's good to see that they've carved niches for themselves and they are doing well. So congratulations to all of you for taking the risk and going into an area that perhaps people thought was impossible.
Thank you,
No, I was saying a big one. So you guys have a very strong corporate brand, and you can use that to generate increased content. And it doesn't have to be all about the sponsorship, because I know you guys do a lot of sponsorship, but I follow your corporate brand and I see all the work that you do. But how do you extend that corporate brand in terms of your 5Ks, in terms of giving back to communities? How do you get the community involved in sharing the information? So as Lisa said, it's not specific, it's not specifically about the chicken, but it's about the brand and what the brand is doing for the community and how you can sensitize consumers about enjoying how you use that.
Okay, great.
Sorry, I know you said that's the last question, but I have one more. Because Minister Hannah just touched on something. Hello everyone, good evening. My name is Virginia Green, law student at University of West Indies, and I could say a budding entrepreneur. Now, Minister Hannah just said something about carving your own niche. And I think a lot of us would know by now that a lot of young Jamaicans are on YouTube making videos and all of these things. I have found out that a lot of these YouTubers that I follow personally actually quit their day jobs. They're making so much money, but how much money are the young people in Jamaica making? What is Jamco doing legally to amend their laws to allow us to make a living out of this? Because when they make these wonderful videos, that's a very Rowan Perry, all of these, you name it, they're not making a cent. But YouTube is getting a lot of popularity from it, they're not making a profit. Whereas you have Patricia Bright, Shirley B. and these American people, they quit their day jobs. So what is Jamco doing?
Well, it's a very interesting question because Jamco doesn't actually make the law, but I'm going to let my manager answer that question.
I am thinking.
Actually, there's quite a lot that's happening now where that is concerned, and I know the Ministry of Justice is actually well, the laws are being created so that you can actually take payments online. So that is moving in that particular area. Also, the intellectual property laws are being revamped. But I would say to young persons like yourself, there are spin-offs. Even if you can't make the money from it, you can put subscribe and put where they can subscribe to, so that you make the spin-offs in other ways. They can call you, they can email you, they can book you for events, other consulting fees. So the persons who are making the videos, and you can say other content that's available and sell it in another way. So you have to be creative. Gee, I should really consult. You have to be creative in finding those ways to make it work until that legislation is passed.
Thank you very much.
I would add to that. You have the challenge of being in a small country, and you're not going to have the reach that these large YouTubers in the States have. YouTube is a monetized platform. They get paid based on views, and I have had into talks with like Tucker Carl, who has millions of followers, and he's gone off into a TV show on MTV. But even on his YouTube channel, he talks about starving for a year or two with his friends in a house, working on his videos. Everything they made was spun back into costumes, design, setup, before it became viable, before they were making their money. And that's with hundreds of thousands of followers. What I've realized that as a local person, a person has to, and they have to do based on the size, they spin it off into, as you said, performance, appearance fees, posting, endorsements, brand ambassadorships, or you have to start kind of selling out without selling out, featuring brands on your page in some ways, and getting that kind of stuff. As I said, some influencers I have worked with or do work with, they are chefs and have Instagram accounts with 5,000 followers. I contact them and say, hey, here's the protein, you and recipe creation fee. And they benefit from that, and it lowers their overhead costs for their own production, and then they can monetize in other ways. So you have to be more creative, because you're not gonna, as a Jamaican, be in a house and paying me 95 money off of just YouTube views. It's not gonna happen. Only one is the breakouts and we're reaching out and then fly out, which we don't want to do. So.
Good point. All right, well, we do thank you for these questions. I think we had some amazing questions and definitely some amazing answers from our panelists and definitely from our keynote speaker. Just want to leave you with some tips, I think, that we all touched on today, that you can apply to your social media activities. Definitely try to create a sense of community amongst your followers, your target audience members, and our panelists today provided some insight on how a sense of belonging is really the heart of a successful brand. Number two would be to go where other brands do not, get creative, right? While it's important for your brand message to be consistent, you must remember to explore new content and ideas. All right? And number three would be to give consumers a voice through social media. Do not be afraid. Right? As much as we open ourselves on social media platforms, we definitely have to give our consumers a voice to speak and give us their opinions, their feedback. Number four, to use imagery. We talked about Instagram being visual, right? That's one of the benefits that a lot of people say they get from using Instagram. So definitely using the proper imagery in your campaigns and in your posts and your activities. And last but not least, to be more interested than interesting, right? It's not about pushing out your influence, trying to sell your brand and saying, we do this and we have that, we have a better product, but to be interested in what your consumers are interested in, to share that interest. All right, well, I want to thank everybody for taking your time out and listening to us, and definitely for our panel for giving some insight. And I'm going to ask Corb just to take us home.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sandy, for moderating the panel. Thank you, Melissa, for being here. And thank you to all the panelists, Christina, Andrew, and Terry.
You make green look good, Corb.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. We've been recording from Festival of Amusement, and the video will be online in bits and slices, and the full video is also important. I want to thank our sponsors, very important. ATL Group, People Company, Digital Jamaica Marketing, Festival of Amusement, Jampro, Nationwide, Island 62, Sleek, and Famicon. On Tuesday, we're going to have a big social media party at Eden Paris Group, sponsored by Digital and Fame. And on Monday at 6 at ATL Group on Oxford Road, we will have a senior panel for bloggers. So if you're interested, please stop by. Thank you so much. Oh, there's a selfie stick. So
No, you're welcome. Are we too close? Like, Lindsay, where are you going?